The whole cafeteria went silent when his foot shot out, and the new girl went flying, her lunch tray exploding across the floor, her knees hitting hard tile. Some kids laughed, some just watched, but nobody expected what came next. Because while she was picking up her food with trembling hands, her eyes weren't angry. They were calm, focused, dangerous, like she'd seen worse. Like this wasn't the first time somebody tried to break her. And that's when the mistake was made, because the boy who tripped her just started a war. He couldn't win. It was her first day at Jefferson High, and the smell of bleach and cheap pizza filled the hallways. Nia Carter, 17, walked with that careful grace people have when they've learned to move through pain. She'd transferred from Atlanta, leaving behind a hospital room, a physical therapist who believed in miracles, and a past she didn't talk about. To most people, she was just the quiet new girl with the limp. But inside, Nia was rebuilding piece by piece, her body, her confidence, her faith that people could be kind. Jefferson High wasn't cruel. Not exactly. It was just a place where people noticed difference, and difference made them nervous. Kids like Troy Daniels, tall, loud, and always surrounded by a pack of followers, made sure nobody forgot their place. His laughter was the kind that made you feel small. His words cut sharper than knives. When Nia walked into the cafeteria that afternoon, holding her tray steady, she didn't expect anyone to notice her. She wasn't there to make friends, just to make it through the day. But in a room where noise and gossip ruled, quiet confidence was its own kind of spotlight. Troy saw it, and for someone like him, a girl who didn't flinch was a challenge. He leaned back in his chair, smirked at his friends, and whispered something that made them snicker. Nia passed their table, eyes forward. She didn't even see the foot sliding out until it was too late. The sound was small, just a thud, a gasp, a tray hitting the ground. But in the cafeteria, it echoed like a slap. Mashed potatoes splattered across Nia's shoes, juice bleeding into the cracks of the tile. For a second, no one moved. Then the laughter started. Troy leaned back, hands folded behind his head, proud of himself like he'd just pulled off a magic trick. His boys clapped and hollered, calling out cruel jokes. "Yo, new girl can't even walk straight." One shouted. Another mimed a slow limp, dragging his leg like a cartoon. Nia's face flushed, but she didn't cry. She didn't shout. She just knelt down quietly, gathering bits of food with her napkin. Her hands shook, not from fear, but from the effort to stay calm. Somewhere deep inside her, a muscle memory twitched. Not from the fall, but from months of recovery, the endless exercises, the pain that made her grit her teeth until she saw stars. The crowd watched her in uncomfortable silence. The laughter started to fade. There was something in the way she moved, deliberate, steady, that didn't fit the script of humiliation Troy had written for her. A teacher's voice called from across the room, but it was drowned out by Troy's final taunt. "What's wrong, new girl? You forget how to stand?" That one line cut through her like a blade. She rose slowly, balancing on her good leg first, then the other, brushing food from her jeans. When she looked up, her eyes found Troy's, and for a heartbeat, the whole cafeteria froze. She didn't glare. She didn't speak. But the look in her eyes, calm, unbroken, said everything. Troy smirked again, but there was hesitation now, flicker of confusion. Nia bent down, picked up her empty tray, and turned away. The teacher finally arrived, fussing, asking if she was hurt. She said she was fine, but inside, something had shifted, something small but powerful, as she walked out of the cafeteria. Whispers followed her. Some kids laughed nervously. Others watched her go, guilt tugging at their chests. Even Troy's friends fell quiet, unsure if the joke had gone too far. That night, Nia replayed the moment in her mind. Not the fall she'd felt worse pain before. What stayed with her was the laughter, the helplessness of standing there with everyone watching, and the way she'd looked into Troy's eyes, not to fight, but to promise something. Because Nia Carter had learned that silence could be louder than screams. And tomorrow, she was going to remind everyone at Jefferson High just who they were laughing at. The next morning, Jefferson High looked exactly the same: crowded halls, the hum of lockers slamming, sneakers squeaking against tile, but to Naya, everything felt sharper. Every whisper, every glance carried the weight of what had happened yesterday. She'd thought about skipping school, letting the day pass while her humiliation faded into someone else's gossip, but that wasn't who she was anymore. She'd promised herself that when she moved to this new city, she'd stop letting other people decide her story. She walked through those double doors with her chin lifted just high enough to say, "I'm not broken." Still the laughter lingered. She caught it in the corners of the hallway, soft and cruel. Some kids mimicked her limp when they thought she couldn't see. Others stared at her tray when she walked into the cafeteria again, waiting for another fall. But Nia didn't take the bait. She sat at the far end of the lunchroom, earphones in, pretending to read while her stomach twisted with quiet rage. Across the room, Troy sat with his crew, loud as always. He was the kind of guy who fed off attention. The more people laughed, the bigger his grin got. But that morning, something was off. He caught Nia's gaze for a second and looked away quicker than he meant to. He'd expected tears, maybe anger, not silence, not that unnerving calm. That same afternoon, during gym, the coach announced a new activity, a charity dance performance for the school's spring fundraiser. Everyone groaned, except the girls who lived for TikTok dances. But Naya froze. Dance. The word hit her like electricity. Before the accident, before the surgery and the rehab, she had lived to dance. It was her sanctuary, her heartbeat. She hadn't performed in almost 2 years. When Coach Thompson asked for volunteers, Nia stayed quiet. She wanted to step forward, but fear whispered reminders. The limp, the pain, the laughter. Then she heard Troy's voice behind her, just loud enough to sting. "Guess that's one thing the new girl can't do." A few chuckles rippled through the gym. Nia turned slightly, catching his smirk. For a moment, the old version of herself, the one who hid behind silence, wanted to disappear again. But something inside her snapped into focus. She raised her hand. "I'll volunteer." The gym went still. Coach Thompson blinked, surprised. "You sure, Nia? You don't have to if you're not comfortable." "I'm sure," she said, her voice even. "I used to dance." Troy snorted. "Used to." Coach ignored him, jotting her name down. But the damage was done. Troy's words echoed through the group like smoke. Over the next few days, Nia practiced in the empty auditorium after school. At first, her movements were clumsy. Her legs still ached if she pushed too hard. Every time she stumbled, she could almost hear that laughter again, that tray hitting the floor. But she kept going. Step by step, beat by beat. Her body remembered what her mind had tried to forget. Sometimes she stayed until the janitor turned off the lights. In those dark corners, with music filling the air, she wasn't the new girl anymore. She was Nia Carter, the girl who'd learned how to rise every time she fell. But word spreads fast in high school. By Friday, Troy and his friends had found out about her dance rehearsals. They showed up one afternoon pretending to watch. First they just whispered and snickered, making fun of her limp, the way she moved slower than the other dancers. Then Troy pulled out his phone, pretending to film. "Hey Nia," he called out. "Show us how you fall in rhythm." The girls around her froze. Some looked embarrassed, others laughed nervously. Nia stopped mid-step. For a moment, her throat tightened, that old shame threatening to crush her again. But she took a breath, slow, steady, and turned to face him. "Keep recording," she said quietly. "You might learn something." Then she started to dance. Not perfectly, not like before, but every move carried weight, strength, pain, grace, the kind that only comes from surviving. The room fell silent, except for the music. Even Troy lowered his phone, uncertain. Her movements told a story he couldn't joke about breaking and rebuilding. It's about losing everything and still showing up. When the song ended, she stood there, breathing hard, staring at him. "Post that," she said. Then she walked out. For the first time, Troy didn't have a comeback. That night, a short clip from the rehearsal appeared on social media. Someone else had recorded it, not him. The caption read, "She's stronger than she looks." Within hours, The video spread through the school. Comments filled up with words like respect, damn, and that's powerful. By Monday, the energy at Jefferson High had shifted. People who once laughed at Nia now nodded when they passed her in the hall. Some apologized quietly. Even teachers looked at her differently. But Troy couldn't handle it. He felt the walls closing in, the control slipping from his hands. Every smirk, every comment, every cruel joke, suddenly people weren't laughing anymore. They were looking at her. So he did what bullies do when they start to lose power. He escalated. He began spreading rumors, whispering that Nia's dance video was fake, that she edited it to look better. He told people she was playing victim for sympathy. And when that didn't work, he tried something worse. He snuck into the auditorium one afternoon and messed with the sound system, hoping to embarrass her during the fundraiser show. But what he didn't know was that someone was watching his own best friend, Marcus. Marcus had started to feel sick about the whole thing. He'd seen Nia's strength firsthand, and it didn't sit right with him anymore. So instead of helping Troy, he quietly recorded what Troy did. The next day, Marcus slipped Nia a flash drive. "You might want to see this," he said. Inside was the video Troy unplugging wires. Laughing with his friends, mocking her again. Nia stared at the screen, her jaw tight. She'd given him chances. She'd tried silence, dignity. But now, it was time for something else. Not revenge, justice. As she stood on that stage the night of the fundraiser, lights blinding her, the whole school watching, Nia smiled. She knew exactly how to turn Troy's cruelty into his undoing. And by the end of the night, everyone in Jefferson High would know it too. The night of the fundraiser arrived with a kind of electricity that hummed through every hallway. The auditorium was packed. Parents, students, teachers, and even a few local reporters from the community paper. It was the biggest event Jefferson High had held all year. The stage curtains glowed under the warm lights, the air thick with perfume, popcorn, and nerves. Backstage, Nia adjusted her laces and tried to steady her breathing. Her heart thudded in rhythm with the music playing faintly through the speakers. She'd been practicing for weeks, but tonight wasn't just about dancing. It was about something bigger, reclaiming her power. Showing the world that the girl they tripped, mocked, and underestimated had never been broken. Marcus found her just before she went on. His face was pale, nervous. "You sure you want to do this?" he asked. "If Troy finds out I gave you that video, he's going to come for me too." Nia looked at him, her expression calm but fierce. "He already came for both of us, Marcus. The difference is, tonight I'm finishing it." He swallowed hard, then nodded. "You've got this." When her name was announced, the applause was polite, the kind reserved for new kids no one really knows. Troy and his crew sat in the fourth row, whispering and laughing, pretending not to care. He leaned back with that same smug grin, certain that his prank would ruin her performance. He knew the sound system was rigged. The audio would cut out mid-song, throwing everything off. It was his last little power move. But what Troy didn't know was that Nia had already replaced the sound file. With the help of the stage tech and Marcus, she'd uploaded a completely different version, one that would tell her story and reveal his. The lights dimmed. A soft piano note echoed through the auditorium. Then, on the massive screen behind her, a video started to play. It wasn't part of the official program at first. People thought it was an introduction video, clips of her practicing, maybe. But within seconds, murmurs spread through the crowd. Because the footage wasn't of Nia dancing. It was of Troy. The video, captured by Marcus, showed Troy sneaking into the auditorium earlier that week. He was laughing, bragging, pulling out wires, joking about how he was going to ruin the crippled girl's big moment. The sound quality wasn't perfect, but his voice was clear enough. Gasps rippled through the audience. Teachers shifted forward in their seats. Troy froze, his smirk collapsing. His friends looked around, panic flashing across their faces. Then the video faded out. The screen went black. Silence, and in that silence, Nia stepped into the light. No music, no backup dancers. Just her, standing center stage in front of hundreds of eyes. The same limp they had mocked was still there, but she stood taller than she ever had. Slowly, she lifted her chin and began to move. Her body flowed like water, soft, then sharp, rising with the rhythm only she could hear. She danced to the sound of her own heartbeat. Every step was a memory. The hospital bed, the pain, the laughter in the cafeteria, the humiliation. Every turn, every stretch was defiance. The crowd watched in stunned quiet. It wasn't just beautiful, it was powerful, raw, alive. Halfway through the dance, the music came back, a low, soulful beat that filled the room like thunder. Naya's movement synced perfectly with it, every motion telling a story of endurance and rebirth. The audience couldn't look away. Even the students who had laughed at her before now leaned forward. Breathless, by the time the final note played, Nia was standing still, chest rising and falling, tears streaking her face. The silence hung heavy for a heartbeat. Then the room exploded in applause. People stood up, cheering, clapping, whistling. The teachers on stage wiped their eyes. And Troy. He couldn't move. His world had just flipped. The entire school had seen the real him, the bully exposed in front of everyone. The same crowd that used to laugh at his jokes now looked at him with disgust. His friends slipped away one by one, not wanting to be seen next to him. As Nia walked off the stage, she caught his eye for just a second. She didn't smile. She didn't gloat. She just looked at him, steady, calm, unbroken. That look said everything. Backstage, Marcus was waiting, grinning like he couldn't believe what he'd just seen. "That was legendary," he said. "You just ended him without saying a word." Nia shook her head softly. "I didn't end him," she said. "He did that himself. I just showed the truth." By the next morning, the video had spread all over social media. Not just the performance, but the whole reveal. Comments poured in. "This girl's a legend. Troy got exactly what he deserved. That dance gave me chills. Troy didn't show up to school that day, or the next." Rumors said he'd been suspended for tampering with school property and harassing a student. The same people who used to follow him around now kept their distance. For the first time since she'd arrived, Nia walked through the halls without feeling like a ghost. People smiled at her. Some said thank you. Others just nodded respectfully, like they knew she'd done something they didn't have the courage to do. But the biggest change wasn't in how they saw her. It was in how she saw herself. She realized that her strength hadn't come from proving them wrong. It had come from surviving long enough to tell her story in her own way. That night, she sat on her bed scrolling through the messages of support. She saw one that made her stop. It was from an anonymous student. "I saw what you did. I've been bullied for my stutter since middle school. Watching you stand up there made me feel like maybe I could stand too." Nia smiled. For the first time, the ache in her leg didn't matter. The limp didn't define her. The scars weren't reminders of weakness. They were proof that she had risen again. And in that quiet moment, she understood. Strength isn't about how loud you are when you fight back. It's about the calm before you rise, the moment you choose to turn pain into purpose. That was the moment everything changed. That was the turning point. The week after the fundraiser felt like the storm after lightning, quiet, charged, and full of whispers. Everyone at Jefferson High was still talking about the performance. About how Nia had turned her pain into power right there on stage. Teachers replayed the video during homeroom as an example of resilience and integrity. The principal even called her into the office to personally thank her for her grace under pressure. It was the kind of attention Nia had never wanted, but now it felt right. She'd earned it. But for Troy Daniels, the world had collapsed overnight. The king of Jefferson High had fallen. His swagger was gone, replaced by empty eyes and silence. When he did show up to school, people turned their backs. The hallway that used to open for him like a red carpet now felt like a battlefield. Posters of the spring fundraiser still hung in the halls, reminders of his public humiliation. Every time he saw Nia's picture smiling beside the words "Rise Above," he felt his chest tighten with something ugly. Guilt, shame, and the first sting of understanding. He tried to delete the clips online, but they had already spread too far. TikTok, Instagram, YouTube, her dance, his prank, their story. Thousands of views, thousands of comments. Everyone knew his name for all the wrong reasons. He wasn't the star athlete or the class clown anymore. He was the bully who got outdanced, outsmarted, and exposed. For days he sat at the back of class, quiet. He'd never been quiet before. The teachers noticed, but didn't ask. Maybe they thought he deserved to sit in the discomfort. Maybe he did. Meanwhile, Nia kept showing up, not just to classes, but to life. She joined the community dance team. She started a small after-school group called Rise, where students who'd been bullied could talk and share their experiences. It wasn't about revenge. It was about healing. Word spread, and soon the room was full every Thursday afternoon. Still, she couldn't shake one thought. Troy never apologized. Not once. Until one afternoon, 2 weeks after the fundraiser, when she walked into an empty gym to grab her water bottle and found him there alone, sitting on the bleachers. The same boy who'd once ruled the halls looked smaller now, almost lost. For a second, Nia considered walking away. He didn't deserve her time, but something made her stop. Maybe it was the quiet. Maybe it was the faint memory of the girl she'd been before the fall. The one who still believed people could change. Troy looked up, startled. "You still coming in here to practice?" he asked, his voice low, almost respectful. "Yeah," she said, setting her bag down. "You still hiding from everybody?" He gave a dry laugh, the kind that carried no joy. "Guess I deserve that." Silence hung between them. The echo of basketballs from the gym next door thudded faintly through the walls. Finally he said, "You humiliated me." Nia raised an eyebrow. "You humiliated yourself, Troy. I just stopped you from doing it to me again." He looked away, jaw tight. For a moment, she saw the pride again, that stubborn streak that made him push people down before they could push him. But then his shoulders slumped. "I didn't mean for it to go that far," he said quietly. "It was supposed to be a joke, you know? Like how we all clown around." "I didn't think that's the problem," she interrupted. "You didn't think. You never do. You just laugh, and everybody else has to live with it." Her words landed hard, echoing in the cavernous room. He didn't argue. He just stared at the floor, his sneakers scraping the wood. "I saw your dance," he said finally. "All of it. Even the video. He hesitated. "I didn't know about your leg, or what you went through. I just saw someone new and thought, if I made fun of you first, no one would make fun of me." Nia studied him for a long moment. "And how's that working out?" He gave a small, broken laugh. "Yeah, not great." For the first time, she saw something different in him. Not arrogance, not cruelty. Just a boy who didn't know how to handle his own pain. "I'm sorry," he said at last. The words were awkward, heavy, real. "Not just for tripping you. For everything. For being the kind of person who thought that was okay?" Nia nodded slowly. "You hurt a lot of people, Troy. You can't fix that with an apology." "I know," he said. "But I had to start somewhere." Something in her softened. Maybe forgiveness wasn't about excusing what he did. Maybe it was about releasing what it did to her. She exhaled, a long, tired breath. "You want to make it right?" she asked. He looked up, surprised. "How? Help me," she said simply. "We're doing a showcase next month for Rise. I want you to be there. Not on stage, behind it. Help set up, clean, whatever. Be part of something that isn't about tearing people down." He blinked, caught between shame and disbelief. "You'd really let me do that?" "I'm not letting you," she said. "I'm giving you a chance. What you do with it is up to you." When she left the gym, Troy sat there for a long time, staring at the spot where she'd stood. For the first time, the silence didn't feel like punishment. It felt like the beginning of something new. The night of the Rise showcase came faster than anyone expected. The same auditorium that had once witnessed his downfall now held something different. Hope. Students shared poems, songs, dances. Some talked about being bullied for their clothes, their voices, their bodies. Some cried mid-speech and got standing ovations, and in the back corner, stacking chairs and running sound cables, was Troy. Nobody cheered for him, but nobody sneered either. He worked quietly, making sure everything ran smoothly. When Nia stepped on stage again, not to dance, but to speak, their eyes met briefly. She smiled, not a wide one, just enough to say, "I see you trying," she told the audience. "Pain doesn't disappear overnight, but it can become something beautiful if you let it teach you." Her voice was steady, her presence radiant. We all fall. What matters is how we rise and who we help up when we do. Applause thundered through the room. Somewhere in the back, Troy clapped too, as the lights dimmed and people began to leave. He walked up to her. "You were right," he said quietly. "It's better helping people up." Nia nodded. "Told you then," she added. "You still owe me a new lunch tray." He laughed. Genuinely this time, and for the first time since that day in the cafeteria. It didn't sting. That night, as Nia stepped outside under the streetlights, the air smelled like rain and promise. Her phone buzzed, messages, tags, notifications from people all over the city. Her story had gone viral again, but this time, it wasn't about the fall or the revenge. It was about the redemption. A news outlet had picked up her story, calling it the girl who danced her way past hate. Thousands of comments poured in from people who'd been bullied, from parents, from teachers, from strangers saying she'd inspired them to stand up to. Nia smiled softly, pocketed her phone, and looked up at the dark sky. She didn't need applause anymore. She didn't need validation. What she had was peace, and the quiet knowledge that sometimes the most powerful justice isn't revenge. It's showing the world that you can't break what refuses to stay down. And for the first time since she'd stepped into Jefferson High, Nia Carter felt completely free. Spring settled over Jefferson High like a long exhale after months of tension. The air felt different, lighter somehow, like the hallways had been cleaned of something invisible but heavy. The posters for the Rise showcase were still up, some edges curling from humidity, but no one dared to take them down. They had become more than decoration. They were a symbol of change. For Nia, life didn't become perfect. It became real. She still had mornings when her leg ached, when memories of that cafeteria floor flashed through her mind uninvited. But those memories no longer held power over her. They had become part of her story, chapters she didn't need to hide. When she caught her reflection limping slightly in the hallway glass, she no longer saw weakness. She saw a survivor, someone who had fallen, risen, stood taller because of it. Her teachers began to notice how her quiet confidence drew people in. The same students who used to snicker now came to her for advice. They asked about the Rise meetings, about how she found the strength to forgive. She always gave the same answer. You can't move forward carrying hate. It's too heavy. Troy's journey was slower. After his suspension ended, he returned to school quietly. No more swagger, no loud jokes echoing through the halls. At first, people still avoided him. The whispers followed him, "That's the guy from the video." But he didn't lash out anymore. He started staying late after class, helping teachers carry boxes, cleaning the gym after basketball practice. No one asked him to. He just did it. One afternoon, Nia found him in the art room, painting a backdrop for the next school event. He looked up when she entered, wiping blue paint off his hands. "You're getting good at this whole not being terrible thing," she teased lightly. He smirked, the first genuine one she'd seen from him. Working on it. They stood there in a comfortable silence, the sound of brushes against canvas filling the space. For the first time, it didn't feel like they were on opposite sides of a line. It felt like two people who had finally stopped running from who they were. "I talked to the principal," Troy said suddenly. "He's letting me start a mentoring program next semester. For middle school kids, the ones who get in trouble early, figured maybe I could stop them before they end up like me." Nia nodded, warmth rising in her chest. "That's a good start." He looked at her earnest now. "You really forgave me, didn't you?" She thought about it. Forgiveness wasn't a switch that flipped on. It was a choice she made over and over again. "I did," she said finally, "but not for you." "For me?" Troy smiled faintly. "Yeah, I get that." The school year drew to a close with laughter that sounded lighter than before. The cafeteria, once the scene of her humiliation, had become just another room. Sometimes, when she passed the exact spot where she fell, she paused not to relive the moment, but to remind herself how far she'd come. The new freshman coming in that fall would never know what happened there. To them, she was just Nia Carter, the senior who ran Rise and organized the charity showcase. And that was enough. At home, her mom noticed the change too. "You smile more," she said one evening as they sat on the porch. "You look like you finally came back to yourself." Nia sipped her lemonade, watching the sunset bleed gold across the sky. "I think I finally stopped trying to be who I was before the accident," she said. "I just started being me now." Her mother reached over, squeezing her hand. "And that's a beautiful person to be." Graduation came like the final scene in a movie. The sun blazed high above the football field, families waving signs, cameras flashing. When Nia's name was called, she walked across the stage with her limp visible and her head held high. The crowd stood and cheered, not out of pity, but respect. She caught sight of Troy in the second row, clapping hard, a small, proud smile on his face. When it was his turn, the applause was softer but genuine. Redemption doesn't erase the past, but it makes the future possible. After the ceremony, he found her among the crowd. "Hey, Carter," he said, handing her a small envelope. "Something for you." Inside was a photo, a still frame from the night of her dance, her body mid-motion, light glowing behind her like a halo. On the back, in shaky handwriting, he'd written, "Sometimes the people we trip are the ones meant to teach us how to stand." T.D. She laughed, blurring her vision. "That's actually good," she said. "Don't tell anybody," he replied with a grin. They hugged, brief, awkward, real. Then they went their separate ways. Months later, Nia found herself back in a dance studio, this time teaching little kids. The mirrors gleamed, the music pulsed, and laughter filled the air. Every time one of the students stumbled, she smiled and said, "It's okay. Falling's just another way to learn your rhythm." When the parents came to pick them up, one woman said, "My daughter watches your video every week. Says you're her hero." Nia smiled softly. "Tell her I'm just a girl who didn't give up." When the studio emptied, she turned off the lights, letting the quiet wrap around her like peace. Across town, in a small community center, Troy stood in front of a group of middle schoolers. "You think being tough means hurting people?" he said, his tone firm but kind. "Try saying sorry. That's real toughness." Behind him on the bulletin board was a poster of Nia's Rise logo, a phoenix spreading its wings. He'd asked if he could use it. She said yes. Time passed. The story of the cafeteria incident faded from the school's memory, but the lessons didn't. Jefferson High had changed. Bullying hadn't vanished completely, it never does, but it had lost its crown. The laughter that once echoed cruelly through the halls had been replaced with something better: accountability, compassion, and the understanding that every person carries battles we can't see, and if you walked through those halls now, you might still hear someone mention the girl who danced through her pain, the boy who changed his ways. In the moment one act of courage turned a school upside down, Nia's story wasn't just about revenge or even redemption. It was about transformation, the kind that starts in the quiet. When you decide that pain won't be the end of your story because the truth was simple, and she carried it with her everywhere she went. Sometimes the world trips you. Sometimes it laughs when you fall. But the real power isn't in how fast you get up, it's in how gracefully you rise. They say every story leaves a mark, some on the world, and some on the people brave enough to live it. Nia Carter's story wasn't about a cafeteria or a bully or even the dance that changed everything. It was about the quiet decision to rise again and again, no matter how hard the fall. It was about turning pain into purpose and proving that strength isn't loud or flashy. It's steady, patient, and unbreakable. In the end, the cafeteria floor became a memory. The laughter faded. What remained was something stronger, the ripple of courage she left behind. One girl's choice to stand up became the reason others did too. And that's how real change begins. Not with crowds or applause, but with one person who refuses to stay down. Somewhere out there, another kid is sitting alone at lunch thinking they're invisible. Maybe they've been laughed at. Maybe they've been broken down to their last ounce of pride. But if they could see Naya's story, if they could see how one fall led to flight, maybe they'd believe that their moment to rise is coming too. Because the truth is, pain isn't the end of your story. It's just the beginning of the chapter where you take your power back. Falling doesn't define you. Getting back up does. If this story moved you, if it made you think, or if it reminded you that strength can come from the most unexpected places, hit that subscribe button. Stay with us for more real stories that'll make you feel, heal, and rise a little higher each time. Because here, every story has power, and yours might be the next one we tell.